Welcome to the all new Empowered to Lead vlog series. This is episode 3. My name is Derek Butler, and I'm excited to engage with you as we empower you to be the education leader of equity, access, and diversity in your schools and districts. As you know, we have dedicated this virtual and vlog professional learning space to fostering excellence and innovation in equity leadership. We produced the Closing Gaps by Opening Spaces vlog series, where we first discussed the leader mind shift in this work, developing a growth mindset. Then we produced the Leader Fit vlog series, where we discussed the practical leader moves to prioritize the work and work on the work, developing those leadership muscles. Right? Well, in this new vlog series, we've been on this journey of introspection and reflection. And we've been committed to empowering you to engage in the practice of self awareness. In short, my goal is to continue to challenge you to be a leader that is metacognitive, because really effective leadership begins from within. So if you're ready to examine your thinking, your learning, and engage as a reflective practitioner about your role in leading equity, access, and diversity, then let's jump into our conversation. We're on the air. So, you may know that I have the privilege of being dad to my 3 beautiful children. My most important child is my oldest, my favorite child, who's the middle, and my joy, my 4-year old. Seriously, though, I really do love them all. As you might imagine, I spend a lot of playtime with my 4-year old, and she enjoys the occasional outdoor excursions to the park, right? One of her favorite playground outdoor activities, besides climbing on my back, is climbing the mountain wall. I can recall one Saturday, uh, during our play date, as soon as we got to the park, she ran over to the climbing wall, uh, took the first step without hesitation, and then froze. And I went over and encouraged her to keep going, but she just looked down and said, "Daddy, help me off." And while initially I said, "Of course, sweetie," because she really looked startled. The other part of me said, "This is a teachable moment." Now, I realize to those parents out there that I have to be careful not to make everything a teachable moment, and allow kids to explore, have fun, fail, succeed. But this is a moment where I thought, hey, she's done this before. Maybe she just needs a refresher. I don't know. And plus, she wanted to get on the big slide, and secretly so did I. Right. Anyway, I reminded her before she got on, because this was still relatively new to her, to consider her approach, right? More specifically, how and where to begin her feet for the climb. It's the old metaphor, right? How do you climb this mountain? One step at a time, right? So, as you reflect on your impact and influence in this episode, I want you to also consider your approach to designing improvement. This intentional and inclusive design approach serves as the anchor to the high peak, high priority, continuous improvement steps along the way. Like my daughter, if we don't approach this process in a systematic way, we will find ourselves missing a step, delaying our progress, and perhaps even not accomplishing the goal of creating those equitable spaces for students, right? So as you reflect on your impact and influence, I want you to consider all of your students, but in particular those students with disabilities. And of course, while I'm not going to put you on the hot seat, I am going to put you, you know it, on ice. And remember, ice is really just the equity lens from which I want you to examine your thinking. Okay. And in this episode, I will invite you to examine your thinking about the intentional design of continuous improvement and the inclusive design of continuous improvement and its subsequent impact on our most marginalized and underserved students in classrooms. Okay. So, but first, before we do that, what do I mean when I talk about the design of continuous improvement? So let's take a step back to review and make a connection to two of the designs in our Lead Embrace framework that sustains instructional excellence. First, the action plan GPS. Remember, this is about sustaining co-teaching excellence by creating those 45, 60, 90-day action plans that serve as a monitoring and accountability of those very specific practices and priorities. And then the logic of logistics focuses on scheduling and positioning teachers and students for success. So keep those two designs in mind as we engage in this episode. So, first, here we go. I want you to identify the areas in your school or district that perhaps necessitate a systematic improvement review, right? This step is really both critical in recognizing and mitigating the inequities that may exist. In our Leader Fit vlog on action planning and the logic of logistics, we emphasize the importance of knowing your staff and students by name, need, and strength. And this step is the foundation of effective action planning and scheduling for students with disabilities. Well, as you consider the intentional design of a more comprehensive school or district improvement process, it's going to be important to identify and know your systems, your supports, and your structures by name, need, and strength. And so, this design assessment is really critical to identifying practices that may be perpetuating a system of sorting and segregating. So here's some questions to consider. Right? How are you currently engaged in identifying areas of inequity within your school or district, particularly for students with disabilities? Right? And what specific data points and tools do you use to uncover and analyze those gaps for affecting these students? Let's talk about the impact, right? So you may remember that our Leader Fit framework emphasizes being focused, intentional, and tracking your leader moves. Measuring the impact of your decisions, interventions, and practices and systems is key to continuous improvement. In an article I read in the district administration, one of the writers, Jamie Sowers, emphasizes, and I quote, districts must build into their special education programs benchmarks and processes that allow them to measure and adjust interventions through a child's academic career, right? And so here's some questions for you to consider. What impact do your current policies and practices have on students with disabilities? How do you measure and track the success of interventions designed to support these students? Number three, are there any unintended consequences of your current strategies that may be creating additional barriers for students with disabilities? And then, are your special education programs and outcomes in your 3 to 5 year school or district strategic plan? Right? Here's the next thing. Create, cultivate, right? So cultivating a supportive culture is essential for sustaining continuous improvement. So here's some questions to consider, right? How do you cultivate a culture that values and promotes equity? How do you encourage and support teachers, staff, leaders in implementing equitable and inclusive practices in their classrooms and their spaces? Here's an important one. What professional growth opportunities do you provide to staff to help them grow? In recent and quite frankly, continued conversations, I hear about the significant lack and gap in cultivating a space of continuous learning and support. And so in the book, Trust and Inspire by Stephen Covey, he talks about the three stewardships of a trust and inspire leader. The second stewardship is trusting, and it's about how you lead. And as I reflect on my personally on my leadership, I'm often considering, have I provided clear expectations? Because without that, it's difficult to practice accountability, which is a critical aspect of the intentional and inclusive design process. And if I'm truthful, in my early leadership experience, I can't say that I was always clear. This trust and inspire leadership framework is really designed to support and grow people. So I really encourage you to think about how you cultivate a space that clearly defines its values, provides encouragement and support, and that enhances the growth and development of people, right? And before you do that, I encourage you to reflect on your own leadership practice of clarifying expectations and co-designing accountability. So let's talk about create. Our action plan design focuses on creating detailed 45 to 90-day action plans that are regularly reviewed and updated. This granular approach ensures that plans are actionable and measurable. Over the last year, our district senior leadership has been engaged in revising our district's strategic plan. And while our district leadership has been engaged in this high level overarching development of key priorities, these key performance indicators, um, and, uh, and measured by lagging indicators. The grit work and the granular work is in the tactical action planning design and approach. And it's those leading indicators that really guide our work along the way. So create actionable tactical plans that are designed with equity as the top line and the through line, not as a separate line. And as you consider creating your action and tactical plans, consider this one important question. What role do students, families, and the community play in the creation and execution of those plans? And hold on to this because we're going to come back to that. The next one is eliminate. In our discussions on the logic of logistics, we highlighted the importance of scheduling and positioning students and staff for success, right? Eliminating barriers is crucial for effective scheduling and resource allocation. And the same is true for designing a comprehensive and continuous improvement process. Okay. So here's one question to consider. What structural barriers currently exist uh, that may hinder students with disabilities from achieving their full potential? Mhm. Let's talk about engage. Lastly, I want you to reflect on this piece. You know, engage all stakeholders in the process of continuous improvement. Collaboration and communication is key to sustaining long-term success, right? Engaging stakeholders in a continuous process involves regular communication, feedback, and collaboration. Our leadership moves stress the importance of involving all stakeholders in this process. So here's a question to consider. How do you foster ongoing dialogue and feedback to refine and enhance equity-focused improvement work in your school and district? You know, remember that the intentional and inclusive design of continuous improvement is an ongoing journey. And really, due to the elevation and terrain of this work, it often presents significant challenges for leaders. But to pause for a moment to engage in intentional reflective practices around this work is essential. So if you reflect at the end of the day or journal at the end of the week, I encourage you to continue taking a few moments to self-reflect because it matters. Remember this, the more reflective you are, the more effective you are. Listen, I'm confident that your investment in this leadership refueling will lead to shifts in your practices and it will result in successful student outcomes. Thank you for joining me and for being a thought partner as we reflect and deepen our learning on how we are uniquely positioned and empowered to lead the work of equity, access, and diversity.